Everybody who comes to the to our session or to our BoFs, I always bring some show and tell, and I have one giveaway. So the person who can plead with me that they need a spy hook the most gets a spy hook, minus the serial connector because I don't have one. I didn't have one with me. I found this in the bottom of my box, and I'm just like, I know it's terrible. I got the USB cable, and I've got the programmer cable, but I don't have the right other piece. But
Are you taking karaoke requests?
I am totally taking karaoke requests. So I'm going to give you guys a quick early preview, and you guys will actually get to touch these things. I'm not letting people touch these tomorrow. But so Jose Navarro down in Guadalajara designed up a relay lure a little while back, and we finally have prototypes. So that's going to get shown off. It's going to go clicky-clicky tomorrow, assuming nobody fries it before tomorrow. We are giving away tadpoles in the Intel booth. So if you want tadpoles, this is an assembled one by that man. So if it's broken, it's his fault. So the question for the at-home audience is, how do you detect the lure? The answer is you don't. We assume that you can figure out what lure is attached to your board and that you'll do the right thing. And the biggest reason for that is that there are various detection schemes that have been tried in the past by various other boards. They haven't really worked very well, so I'm going to pass the tadpole around as well. What do you mean I'm getting beat by a $9 computer? I have a better graphics engine than the $9 computer, and I have 2 cores. Yeah, but is it upstream? They submitted the patches. It's not upstream yet. Yeah, they'll probably get it upstream at some point.
We do have an answer to it.
Yeah, that's true.
Configuration. And that, in fact, has been pushed pretty heavily towards mainline. And it's slowly working its way through mainline, and it's well thought out and well organized. So once we have full support in the mainline kernel, and it looks really solid, then we'll start adding methodologies to our lures to do that. But right now we're primarily focusing on just building the ecosystem of the lures themselves and letting it play out as far as that goes.
No talking unless you have the talking stick.
So follow up to your DSTT solution, is that still require either the initial RAM disk override or like rebuilding your kernel with the compiled DSTT?
The answer is no. There's some of these things there are patches currently being pushed that will allow you to do the overrides at runtime. Post runtime, so while the kernel's actually up. We've also got mechanisms to change the DSDT at the firmware level before you pass off to the bootloader. So we can change it before, we can make it look like to the operating system that this is just the way the world is. Or patches are getting pushed by the guys down in Brazil, right? I think it's the guys down in Brazil right now to do it dynamically after the boot. So that's coming. I've also got, again, another prototype lure from Jose, the fish feed lure. Because we're really good at naming things, and you plug this lure into a breadboard. So you feed bread to fish. So it's, yeah, okay. I am no longer ever allowed to help name things, I think is the correct answer to that. And because Tom's sitting in the room, I grabbed the BeagleBone cape to MinnowBoard adapter. So if you guys haven't seen that. I have the microbus PCB. So our friends at Osh Park, I don't think Drew is in here. But I do have a PCB. We haven't actually loaded it up yet because we only got it back very, very recently. And of course my bag is a mess. So now I can't find it. Was it in my pocket? You're going to ask me.
Sorry, I'm really interested in your DSTT override support in, you said at boot time before the kernel load, so is that something you've added to the BIOS?
Sorry. So the way that ends up working is we've actually got a very small, that's not it, UEFI program that takes, or that can read in the appropriate DSDT and shove it into the firmware. So it's basically like a UEFI shell command that you can add to your firmware, and then it'll just run. I may have put it down on my desk up in my room, because I'm not finding it. Yeah. It is not a permanent update, it is per boot. Per boot, yeah.
Can you automate that?
Yes.
Yeah.
So UEFI has shell scripting capabilities, so you can actually script it to do a lot of different things. Normally, you can do a startup.nsh file and put in whatever you want to execute on startup. And that would be one of the items, is to go out there and read the DSDT or SSDT that you want to load. Yeah. But so we also basically what we're showing off with the lures is we want to show that a lot of the ecosystem of individual developers are starting to create accessories for the MinnowBoard, and there's a wide variety of things that are getting created for it. And one of the ones that we were talking about is the microbus. They have approximately 300 different what they call click modules, sensors, LEDs, wide range of things. This allows you to just use regular modules. Companies like Mouser and DigiKey carry the click modules in stock. Most of them are $20 or less, so it's a really nice small adapter to that, and it's pretty simple to work with.
I will probably be twirling it in my hands for the rest of the week, so if you want to take a look at that, come find me. It looks surprisingly like the, well, I think if you take a look at the purple PCB that's getting handed around, the BeagleBone to MinnowBoard adapter, if you think that only in the tadpole size and with a microbus pinout on it, that's almost exactly what it looks like. And I am sure I just left it on my desk upstairs. So I feel kind of stupid now. Yeah, it's, yeah.
Right now it's just one. You could expand it to more, but I wanted to keep it small as a kit so that you can at least start experimenting with it. But you could do a full size, same size as the MinnowBoard. Yeah. Well, I think I calculated that I could do 4 because there are some edge requirements for microbus. So I think I calculated that I could get 4 solids on there without an issue. Just out of curiosity, how many people here actually have a MinnowBoard Max or Turbo?
Okay. How many of you want a MinnowBoard Max or Turbo? Oh, okay. No, I don't have any. So, yeah, I'm actually kind of curious. Those of you who have boards, other than Lucas over there, because I know what he's doing with his. Yeah, I can't talk about what he's doing with his. You know. That's true. Yeah, no, we've got there are boards running at the as demos over in the Yocto and the Intel booth. So if you haven't seen them, go take a look. We're gonna have actually I think we're gonna have most of these lures running at the tech showcase tomorrow night. And I know I've for whatever reason I've heard over the last couple of weeks, a couple of different times now, that people can't get their hands on the Turbo. And I'm really confused by this because everybody who carries the Turbo, which is Netgate, Mouser, and we just got a third one, Avnet. They all have them in stock. So if you're having problems finding the MinnowBoard Turbo, make sure it says Turbo. If you desperately can't find it, please email me and I will send you links on exactly where to go and click. But yeah, I've heard this a couple of times recently, but everybody, I mean, since the Turbo debuted, it's basically been in stock everywhere. It's actually, we're really, really happy with that because it's the first time it's happened in a very long time that we've been in continuous stock, so we're very happy with that. I know there's a couple of the lures that we're trying to get another run of the lures up, like the calamari, so that people can have some easy initial experiences out of the box with the MinnowBoard. And we're going to take some of these, like the fish food lure, and I think we might even talk to a couple of people about the relay lure, about getting those actually made and available so that you don't have to just order a PCB or a couple of PCBs from Osh Park and then do it up yourself.
How many people here are interested in doing their own lure for the board?
Yeah, that's actually a good question. How many of you want to build your own lure?
Well, actually, a better question is, how many of you guys have actually created your own hardware before? Most of you software developers, or?
How many of you would like us to make it really, really easy for you to make your own hardware? Lucas continues to not count. Yes, we're trying. We've got, for the lures, we've got some pre-done up base plates in Eagle, and I think it's just Eagle right now. We should probably do them up in a couple of other things, but we've got them up in Eagle, so if you want to, Oh, oh yeah, you guys, yeah, somebody, who did them in KeyCat? Was it Luca?
No, it's Jose.
Oh, was it? No, it was Jose.
The relay's done in KeyCat.
Was it?
Yeah,
Oh, I'd forgotten about that.
Libraries for KeyCat. He needs to put those.
Yeah, we should bug Jose on that.
So, how many people are familiar with the Grove module system?
How many of you would like to see Grove on the MinnowBoard? That was a pretty emphatic, you know. Yeah, they've got hundreds of sensors to pick from, so it's just an easy, you grab it, you plug it in, you don't have, well, you still have to fight with it from, well, which I2C bus is this on, and how, what address is it actually at, and all that kind of stuff, but that's at least, one less thing than, how do I wire this up, and, do I need a resistor here, or, okay. Yes.
We have one design already in the prototype phase, so.
Yeah, I think that'll be out. That should be out before the fall. I'd be. Can I add something? Yeah. Oh, here.
No, that's fine. So.
Might as well. I mean, it's getting recorded for posterity.
Okay. So basically, we utilize various embedded board and use the Grow sensors. And good thing about is that they have a common shield, which is called a V9 shield. You can connect any sensors, that analog sensor, digital sensor, or it could be hybrid sensors, and that can go directly into any Arduino kind of things, These are two sides, they have got a header connectors. It can go onto that, and you can interface several, sensors to that, I don't know if you have any plans like that. You said mention design that, yeah.
We've got a board that replicates that shield, but it's designed specifically as a lure. And it adds quite a few additional features. The Arduino interface is fairly limited in the number of I2C, SPI, and things like that. So, excuse me. And so we have a little bit more board real estate and a lot more I/O. So it's fairly robust all the way through. We're just prototyping and testing it now, but the hope is to put it out as an open source design so anybody can take it and manufacture it, and hopefully we'll get someone to manufacture it in volume.
So, just shout your questions. I mean, seriously. We're here, I mean, mainly we're standing here to answer your questions. I mean, this is your chance to tell us what we're doing right, doing wrong, make fun of us.
Do you have a preferred board manufacturer you work with?
For the lures and whatnot? No. I mean, I like Osh Park. They've been really nice to us, but they tend to want to focus on a lot of like the open hardware kind of stuff. So that's awesome, but they're also limited to 2 and 4 layer boards. So if you're trying to do something really, really complicated, they might not be the best. Yeah.
There's about 5 or 6 different companies that are really good to work with for that type of thing, but it also depends on the volume. You can, Seed Studios is really good about working with you on both engineering. Tin Can Tools is really good on low volume production. ADI Engineering, who's the manufacturer for the MinnowBoard Turbo. They're much more high volume and generally more for heavy engineering work, but there's quite a few different ones that are out there. And really, I hate to say it, but a lot of times you can actually just look at a lot of the Big Bone Black manufacturers for lure, their capes and stuff. And generally, most of those are real solid for manufacturing smaller volumes. But again, it's going to really depend on how much volume that you need. Oh, one more. There's a company out of Houston that's really a startup. It's called MacroFab. If you're only wanting like 5 or 10 pieces, you can do your design and get it done through them, and it's really affordable.
Yeah, and I guess just to try and put things into perspective, the relay lure, since I just did this, I think all of the parts, including the PCB, I did 3 of them. I think everything came to less than $30 a board. Just to put into perspective, the components and the costs and everything. So this is, if you think that trying to do a custom lure or something is actually really expensive, it's not when you think about it. You just gotta figure out how to build hardware, and I know that we're mostly software people, so.
Sounds like most of the folks here are software developers. How many of you guys are using Yocto Project for your embedded builds?
Come on, Yocto Project's awesome. Yeah, okay, shout out what your operating systems are. So we've got like 3 or 4 people who are doing Yocto. Come on, just. Fedora? Yeah, actually, I mostly run Fedora. Jesse? So that's Debian. Come on, is that everything? Is that everything that everybody is running? No Ubuntu? Ubuntu? Which flavor of Ubuntu? I'm curious. 14.04? Okay, so the LTS, the one that we know actually works. I've heard rumors that the more recent ones, there's something buggy about booting on those, and I haven't had a chance to track it down.
Tried a question for you, since you run Fedora on yours, is I haven't tried in the last, let's say, since 22. Is the designware SPI stuff getting turned on now in Fedora, or do I still have to build my own kernel?
Sadly, I'm working on it with the Fedora guys. There is a bug. There's a bug in the way that SPI master gets built inside the Linux kernel. We've looked at it. We roughly know how to fix it, but none of us really wants to sit down and do the work because, well, it's a pain. And the bug mostly comes down to SPI master can't be built as a module into the Linux kernel. It has to be built in statically. So it's either on or off. There's no choice. It's a bug in the way it gets built, not in the way the chunk actually works. So it should work as a module, it's just not building that way. And for a variety of reasons, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to convince Fedora to actually turn it on, at least in their default kernel. That being said, I've been, if you've been paying attention to Twitter at all, the CentOS guys are now playing with the MinnowBoard. They're very excited about it, and they seem to be very interested in doing not the default kernel, but a specific kernel for the MinnowBoard. I'm not going to hold them to this, but there's at least movement that some of the distros are starting to do specific kernels for specific boards to make sure that things like SPI master and I2C and yada, yada, yada. I mean, how many people actually want to try and go poking around at the SPI buses on their, their desktop motherboard? This is probably a really bad idea in the general case. So it's a build problem. If you want to bug me about it afterwards, Marcel Holtman and I have been. It's the SPI master that's the problem, not the module, not the driver. No, but you're talking the SPI driver, not the SPI master. Yes, and the SPI master is a layer above that, and the SPI master is where the problem's at. I'll explain it to you later, because it's messy. Because everything with low speed is apparently messy. So, including I2S. God, I love I2S. So useful, yet so obnoxious. Yeah, what are we doing wrong? Come on, tell us what we're doing wrong, guys. This is your forum to complain at us. We'll at least try to defend ourselves.
Sorry, I've only had the board for a couple weeks, but on the turbot, you have the SATA port.
Yes.
Can I pull power for the SATA device?
Not directly from that connector.
Yeah, not from that connector.
The J5 connector over to the side that can be used for either a fan or, say, the power. What I generally recommend, you can actually buy these power supplies that are designed to power an external hard drive. And they have 5 volts and 12 volts built into them. And you can buy off the shelf a little Y cable, and one side of it powers the turbo, and the other side to your hard drive, whatever it is.
Yeah, I've actually had really good luck. If you're looking for one of those, there's a, God, I don't even know. I think it's a SYBA or SYBA. I don't ever remember how to pronounce that. There's like a USB 3 external hard drive adapter. They've got one of the power bricks in there, and it tends to be one of the cheapest options to pick up that power supply. And since it's designed for hard drives, you know it will work with the hard drive without any problems. So, I thought somebody. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, I don't have the part number, but I just ordered, I looked at the current requirements and I just ordered a beefy 5-volt supply and just wired it off to power the Minnow and my SATA hard drive, and it's been running fine for at least 6 months or so. It's been working. Yeah.
I mean, most hard drives are 5 volt these days, so wiring off of your a beefier 5 volt power supply should be fine, but it's just every so often you run into somebody who wants to run like a 3.5-inch drive that requires all the power. And I mean, I actually figured out how to run, I haven't bought this yet and actually tried it, but there is a way that you could run a full by 16 PCI Express graphics card on the Minnow. I figured it out the other day, so maybe I'll actually put that together and see if it works, because every so often somebody asks me, why can't I have a giant graphics card hooked up to my... So M.2, there's a couple of ways you can get to M.2 right now, if you want to play with that. So there's mini PCI Express to M.2 adapters. Right this minute, that is the fastest and easiest way to get to M.2 if you want to play with stuff, because that's basically what we've been doing internally when we want to play with like the M.2 wireless cards or whatnot. Obviously, mini PCI Express does not expose the exact same feature set as M.2. Not that M.2 doesn't have 10 billion different combinations of what it can do, which makes trying to support M.2 a little nebulous. So there are things we can do and there are things we can't do. And with M.2, the way you would need to pull everything out, there's only, I think on the turbo, there's only one keying that we could actually support properly. And nobody's really been keen on doing up or actually taking to production a lure that just pop the mini PCI Express slot off and put or actually probably remove both the mini PCI Express and MSATA and just put an M.2 connector there. Nobody's been really interested in doing that because there's not a lot of M.2 devices yet. So we're kind of in the chicken and egg. Nobody wants to do it, but yeah, it's coming. We know it's coming. It's not. It's not like it's going to blindside us, but nobody's, really keen on doing it yet. So, if you want to play with some of the M.2 stuff, take a look at the mini PCI Express adapters right now. I don't have a better answer than that. Do you have anything better? No, if there is enough demand for M.2, I'm sure we can get people to make up some lures. It wouldn't be hard for us to prototype a couple of lures, but they'd be, God, even at prototype, those would be expensive because they're high speed. They're probably, $50, $60 just to prototype a board? Maybe more than that, so.
Anybody interested in FPGA lure?
Ooh,
Turbo and FPGA?
So the question is anybody interested in FPGA lures? And so there was a bunch of hands for that. The question is do you want it hooked up to PCI Express, or do you want it hooked up to the low-speed bus? And now the question gets much, much harder.
It doesn't get much harder. It's a decision as to whether you. It's really a decision as to whether or not you want something that you can use at a reasonable cost or high performance, and at whatever cost it is. And the smallest part you can do that with is a 484-pin BGA that costs about $72. So that's just for the chip. That's not the card and all the bypasses and everything else. So, but you get a lot out of it. If you do that, it's really a lot of fun, but it's a lot of work. So my answer is I'm hooking it up to the low-speed bus.
Someone wants to play with SDR lures, so that's him.
Who else put up their hands?
Yeah, so there's another FPG, a couple, high speed or low speed?
Different question.
Okay, yeah.
Well, I work for Samsung, and we are doing Tizen. We are using MinnowBoards to test Tizen on Intel architecture. But we have some problems. The problem is that we are unable to buy additional boards, and we need at least 10 of them. MinnowBoard Max.
I can't get you Maxes, I can get you turbos. They're nearly identical.
Are turbo okay?
Why not? It's better.
Because the manufacturer of Max hasn't been manufacturing them as far as we can tell.
Are you familiar with the differences?
Nope.
Okay, so here, let me just work out the difference. They are surprisingly few. So the differences between the Max and the Turbo, besides the name, the Turbo has the E3826 as opposed to the E3825 processor, which is a bump of about 100 to 150 megahertz CPU speed. It's faster. The low-speed expansion header has one pin change in it, so pin 26 now changes from whatever it was, a PC speaker, I think is basically what it was, to a reference M clock implementation. It can still be flipped to GPIO, but this also means that the GPIO number has changed. It's documented on the wiki. So wiki.minnowboard.org. It's documented both on the Turbo page and on the Max page. So it's there for both of them. The HDMI level shifting issue on the Turbo is fixed. The I2C level shifting issue is fixed on the Turbo. God, what else is fixed? There's basically a bunch of fixes, most of which are not even user visible in the general sense, are fixed on the Turbo. It's the exact same firmware, although the firmware reports a couple of different fields because it's made by ADI instead of circuit code, and it's the Turbo instead of the Max. There's a slightly different pin strapping. So if you're trying to detect the board from the GPIOs, there's a slightly different pin strapping so that it defines one's an ADI versus a circuit code. But I think that's literally every, yeah.
But are they available in Europe? Because we have a problem that our company really don't allow us to purchase them here, and sellers from here are not sending them directly to the Poland. So
I was going to say, Mauser can ship from here to Europe. Netgate can, but there's some gotchas on the way that they're working on it. They know that they're trying to get stuff into Europe. They're working on it. And with it's Avnet, right? Yeah. It's Avnet should be able to ship into Europe as well. And all three of them have stock of the turbos right now.
I'd recommend Mauser. They have a really
Yeah.
good side, so.
I was going to say, to be honest, if you're in Europe, I would say Mauser or Avnet is your best bet. Netgate may become your best bet at some point. I'm not sure. They're working on a couple of things. If they come to fruition, then they may be your best bet, but they're not there yet. So. Yeah, try it with the turbos. If you're really, really worried about it, I'm happy to drop ship you one just to make sure. But I don't think anybody who we've ever given a turbo or a max to could even tell the difference, other than if you accidentally plugged something into pin 26 and it didn't do what you were expecting. It doesn't break anything. It doesn't. If you try to toggle the GPIO for for the old one versus the new one, you don't see anything. So that's, and I mean, it's queryable from the firmware. So if you are using pin 26 on a design, the software should be able to figure out what's going on. But yeah, that's the, go to the turbos. I don't think there's anybody right now who would even say buy a Max.
I'm using turbos, and they work very, very well. I've had no problems with them at all. Matter of fact, the only difference was I had to change something in the firmware. That was the only thing I had to do. Okay. But otherwise, but that was just for a special case that I had. So out of the box, it just, it took 10 minutes to get it going. So.
I mean, the firmware team that's doing the firmware, it's the exact same firmware binary between the two boards, and I don't think there's even really that much of a change. I think it was mostly that the SPI part changed that has the firmware loaded on it, and so they had to add that SPI part into the system, and I think that was all they did no, and they made the change for the pin 26. I think that's all the firmware did to change things. So, I mean, it is as close to being an identical board, but basically with a bunch of bug fixes as it can get. Yeah.
Since they are as compatible as possible, are they also compatible on physical level? I mean, mounting holes and...
Everything from a physical standpoint between the two boards is identical. So the mounting holes, the placement, I mean, the MinnowBoard Max cases that were done by Netgate, when the Turbo came out, they just dropped them in and they were perfect fit. So, yeah, no, the Turbo really wasn't intended to be, a completely new board. It's just a different manufacturer. They used a different name because, they're a different manufacturer. I mean, it's
open source hardware.
Yeah.
Anybody can take the design files. We've actually had some folks that took the design files and made boards in toaster ovens. They actually did the BGA package in toaster ovens. So, yeah, made the actual MinnowBoard Max, and I was told that he made 10 boards and 8 of the 10 worked. So that's pretty good.
Did they smell like pizza? They were the most delicious boards ever.
I think it was pot roast.
Yeah, those were the MinnowBoard pizzas.
Just a question on the future. Do you think Cherry Trail might be a next option?
There are a great many SoCs on the roadmap that may or may not be options. We're working on some future things. We don't want to necessarily talk about them too much just because, everything changes and I don't want to necessarily back us into a corner on stuff. We are looking at a lot of new technologies in future boards. We're looking at a lot of different things. I believe we've got something that we'll announce probably later this year. We will announce it later this year. And I think that'll be pretty exciting.
So to answer that in a little bit different way is, the MinnowBoard project started off with the idea to create low-cost developer boards for software developers by software developers. So the entire concept of MinnowBoard has been that it's open source hardware and easy for software developers to use. And so as new processors and different things that come out as part of Intel architecture, we'll try to pick those up and highlight them in a way that makes it easy for software developers to use. Now, when I say that, it may not necessarily be highlighting a processor itself. A good example of this is the SPI hook tool that we created as part of the project. This is an open source USB to UART and USB to SPI flash programmer tool. So it's not necessarily a MinnowBoard, but it's in the spirit of MinnowBoard in the aspect that we're creating open source hardware to make it easy for software developers to do things. And so as new products come out that Intel is manufacturing, we'll roll those in and we'll try to cherry pick, no pun intended, cherry pick the ones that we think will be best highlighted and useful in the open source community.
So there's your completely non-committal answer to your question. Yeah, it's yeah. Trust me, there is so much that we're working on. I would love to talk about all of it, and despite the fact that we're an open hardware project, we can only start talking about things at a certain point, and it sucks. Oh God, I'm not sure I should even repeat that for the record. You are not the only person who has asked for that, and no, I think everybody has been. Well, no, well, has anybody asked that and not been joking? No, I think actually one of them was not joking. One of the people who asked the question was not joking. I don't know. It probably won't happen. I'm just gonna. I said probably. I'm not gonna say no or never, but it probably won't, unless we get really, really. Nah, it's not. I was trying to think of a really good word for that, but it probably won't unless we really, really, and then some word, and I don't know what the word should be. So.
I know I'm not exactly specifically sure about this, but MIPI?
Okay. So for those of you who don't know what MIPI is, there are two flavors. It is, but MIPI is a generally proprietary protocol for communicating either with displays or cameras. So it's shoving image data back and forth, basically. MIPI DSI deals with display. MIPI CSI deals with cameras. C for camera, D for display. So the Bay Trail SoCs that we've got do have MIPI CSI and DSI on the SoC. We didn't bring them out because, again, it's a completely proprietary protocol, and we were concerned that we could pull it out, but nobody could use it. Now, since the MinnowBoard Max came out, it has been, I think it is the most requested feature, I think. I think quickly followed by please change to an Intel NIC away from the Realtek. I think those are literally the only two things we ever hear that need to really change on the board, besides, make it a Xeon and allow for 10 gig Ethernet or something. But
the interesting thing is the Raspberry Pi does have MIPI CSI camera interface on it, and it was for quite some time a proprietary configuration, but they've been pushing it out there quite a bit, and there's a large number of MIPI CSI cameras available for it, and a lot more information has actually gotten out there to make it usable, and in future things we might be able to take advantage of that same type of information to make MIPI CSI available.
I mean,
and just a correction, John. There are actually 17 protocols for MIPI.
what?
Not just two.
Not just two. So there's DSI or MIPI ASI, BSI, CSI. The CSI. God, now I'm in trouble. But yeah. So I would expect MIPI to probably show up in a future product. Don't hold me to it, but I would expect it to pop up because we've gotten a lot of requests for it. So, come on. What else are we doing wrong, doing right? What's the best use of a MinnowBoard in the room? There's a bunch of you who have MinnowBoards. Come on, one up yourselves.
I'm actually using it for all of my development of microcontrollers and FPGAs. So I have a bunch of the white multi-pin things. I call them pubs, but they've got a different name, I'm sure. And with a MinnowBoard, and that's how I do all my development for like Cortex-Ms and stuff like that.
I don't have one. You don't have one?
Oh, man. Sorry. Okay, who else has one who wants to tell us what you're doing with it? Lucas could talk here. Yeah, Lucas can talk now. You can talk about, Tell them what you're doing with the MinnowBoard, because you're doing some cool things, and I don't remember what I can and can't talk about on what you're doing.
So we are flying drones with the MinnowBoard Max and Turbo, and we just plugged the drone lure. There's no difference between the Max and Turbo. Yeah. And we are using Nardo Pilot as the flight stack. What else? Yeah, that is it.
Yeah, I mean, most of the time you don't need a PC speaker for a drone for some strange reason.
So in our case, we're using MinnowBoard as a cluster with MPI. So we enable MPI in Yocto and we communicate like 4 or 5 MinnowBoards and we distribute the workload among the MinnowBoards. Instead of sending to the cloud, we didn't have internet. No, the real reason is that we want to prove that it was possible to have a cluster of Minnow and distribute the workload. And yet they were pretty amazing.
I work for a company that develops control systems for electric utilities, and we're using the MinnowBoard mainly like for prototyping purposes and as like a target to run our builds on, because the product we're building is based on a Bay Trail chip as well. So rather than buying like a several $1,000 dev kit to use, for developers, doing their OE builds to run against, it's just a lot more practical for them to have a tiny MinnowBoard on their desk, and been using it for we're actually running U-boot on ours, and so we're been using the MinnowBoard as a platform for doing the MinnowBoard development since at least recently it's worked right off, with no modifications. So.
Yeah, I know that SJG will be very happy to hear that somebody other than him is using the U-boot stuff. So there's actually, while we ship with a UEFI firmware, if you're not aware, we do have core boot support, which is in mainline, which is pretty awesome, and that actually gets you to CBIOS, which can get you to boot on a MinnowBoard Max everything all the way back to, I think it's Windows 3.1 on a MinnowBoard. And in fact, I think we were doing some demos about a year ago. Yeah, just about a year ago, where somebody was literally just booting Windows 3.1 on a MinnowBoard. Now, admittedly, there was a lot broken with that because instead of 25 megahertz, you're running Windows 3.1 at 1.3 gigahertz, so a little bit faster. So there was that, and we've got U-boot support, obviously, as well, and that's being maintained. I think that's in U-boot mainline now. I'm not 100% sure. I'd have to go back and check, but I think it's in mainline now. So we've got, a pretty extensive firmware range, and we're really happy with that. I don't know if you were here. If you were here a year ago, I think we had just started pushing the firmware. The firmware team had just started actually doing all of their releases upstream into tianocore.org. So, and we've picked up U-boot and core boot pretty quickly after that because the FSP stuff was substantially easier to support at that point. So it's been really great watching, more, MinnowBoard was the first Intel architecture being developed in tianocore.org, despite the fact that Intel's been doing tianocore for, a decade? It was actually a pretty big coup for us, so we're very happy about that. And the firmware team's been, about a week after they started doing the development in open source, because these guys hadn't, they're classic firmware guys. They emailed us and were like, yeah, somebody just dropped a whole pile of patches on us. This is awesome. And it was, welcome to open source. This is the way we do things. So they're super stoked about that. Oh, I got 5 minutes. Oh my God, we actually used up all the time. And I was going to make a joke about the clusters. So we've turned an embedded board into a supercomputer. So. Yeah, we got tech showcase tomorrow night. Stop by, yep. Oh yeah, I mean seriously, if we're missing a lure that you desperately need, let us know. Because to be honest, you're probably not the only one. And we may have something in the works that we should maybe accelerate because we're seeing a different set of priorities than what you guys actually need. Or maybe we've just completely missed something. I mean, we're very open to building more lures. We want to build more lures, and I mean, in fact, there's a bunch of people who are kind of knocking on our doors saying, we want to build lures. What do you guys need? And we've got a set list, and we share it with them, and some of these things appear, and some of them don't. But yeah. So anyway, I mean, we've got the mailing list, we've got the wiki. We're on IRC. If you ever need anything, let us know. We're always happy to help out where we can. And yeah, I mean, any final questions, comments? Excellent. So, thank you.
Thanks, Bruce.